It's the Final Word Ashes Daily. Adam Collins and Jeff Lemon for Westfield, London, and Westfield, Stratford City. More extra, less ordinary. Jeff, a very busy day for you to sum up in 30 seconds.
Bananas Day. Australia added 18 for the last 2 wickets, wrapped up pretty quickly. Looked like they might be in the game early. Ben Duckett out quickly. Zak Crawley playing and missing. Moeen Ali doing the same at 3. And then Moeen goes on to 50. Crawley goes on to 100. They put on 121 together. And then the big one, 206 runs between Root and Crawley. Crawley goes on to 189, monsters them after he reaches 100. Root makes 84. England end up at 4 down with those two out late in the piece. They're 384 on the board. They're leading by, 67?
Yep, you've got it. There were 402 runs scored today. 384 of them in 72 overs by England, the 2 wickets in the final session, both due to a bit of variable bounce, which will be a talking point, I reckon, overnight. But
spicy. That
could not have gone any better for England. They basically had 2 sessions in one between lunch and tea where they added, I wrote it down, they added 178 runs in 25 overs at 7.2 and over, losing just 1 wicket. And after Moeen Ali and Crawley were going at a really decent clip as well for their 121, which you mentioned before. That's the highest score in the series for a number 3, Moeen's 54. I mean, every call they've made, going back to the big one at the start of the series with Zak Crawley opening in the first place, has been vindicated. He's got more runs than anyone in the series.
It was one of those days where, like, you and I have watched a lot of cricket, and there are days when I guess there aren't many of them, but one like today where I sit there and think, well, how is this actually happening? Yeah. How is it possible for test batting to happen in this way? How is it possible for a surface that looked at least challenging yesterday, and it was challenging early on, particularly, like the way that the Australian quicks were bowling early, they were getting seam movement, they were getting the ball to swing a little bit, there was deviation.
Got Duckett.
Got Duckett, almost got Crawley umpteen times. Yep. How does it get to a point where teams can just start hitting through the line and find the gap just about every time? It was an extraordinary sustained attack from Crawley, and the second half of it was, I don't know, you will rarely see something as imperious as that.
Yeah, and if you kind of want to synthesise it, I mean, this is what Bazball's all about, right? Letting them be their best selves or their truest selves, and that's what Crawley does. You know, acknowledging this on commentary through the day, that he does throw his hands at balls outside the line of the off stump. He is a candidate to nick off kind of all the time. Jared Kimber's writing a piece right now about his shot control percentage, lower today than any innings he's played through the Ashes. But that's kind of okay because he scores so quickly and he has so many different types of shots, and he's so bold against the short ball that if he has a day when he can ride his luck, he ends up making bulk runs. I mean, and today was an example of that. That partnership of 206 came from just 186 balls. It's the fastest Ashes 200-run stand ever. Yeah. The second fastest 200 partnership in the history of Test cricket, overtaking Hayden and Ponting against Zimbabwe in 2003.
How long did Paul Collingwood's 206 take at Adelaide Oval?
Yes,
I'm tipping it
2
was
days.
a fair bit longer than that. What they've managed to put together. The Crawley thing is interesting because it's always been, okay, it's high-low, he'll fail a few times, he'll make a big score. He will rarely be able to ride his luck like he rode his luck today. Sure. It was extraordinary. I mean, I can think of 6 off the top of my head times that he edged past the leg stump. And not, the thick edge that goes through deep backward square, but the one that goes just past the leg stump. There was one that Carey was nearly able to catch diving down the leg side. There were another half dozen balls in these first 50 or 60 runs where he's driving on the up, which is so risky when there's a bit of movement. He's trying to drive Stark and Cummins and Hazelwood on the up. So the ball is nowhere near full enough to drive, and he's trying to punch it on the rise through the covers. It's beating him. It's beating the edge by a cigarette paper multiple times. There were so many times and ways he should have got out. The control percentage, his uncontrolled shot percentage was over a quarter of his shots when he reached 100. So at the point that he reached 100, I think Crickby's had it as their 6th worst or 6th least controlled 100 that they had on record at that point in time.
Right.
And then after that, it seems like he's middling just about everything.
Yeah, and he combines that with the ability to play the sort of strokes that remind you why they've backed him so heavily from the outset, because he does typify the way that Bazball's meant to transfer pressure. I know we talked a lot about pressure through this series across 3 and a bit Test matches now. That was it. I mean, Cummins and Smith were under the pump. A lot of the time Cummins was bowling. He looks knackered, by the way, and fair enough. He's done a lot of heavy lifting through this series so far, but it was plan A, plan B, plan C, plan A, plan B again, all in 5 balls. I mean, they were trying to follow where the ball had gone the previous delivery. We saw that was almost a game in India when trying to break the game up. Different story here. It looked more desperate and snatching at things. And there was one stage where Steve Smith was trying to get Cummins' attention, but he's like 100 metres away. He's fielding it deep backward square leg, trying to change the plan mid-over. It's hard work, and that's what Crawley and Root, let's not forget Root in all of this, the enterprising way in which he played from almost the moment
literally
he arrived.
ball one. No, he plays that little short arm jab,
Quite right,
shot, ball one for 4, and then the same over. So that's behind square. Same over, he opens the face and goes through deep third.
That's it.
He's 8 from 4 balls after he's just arrived at the crease, and he carried on at pretty much the same rate throughout.
There was one little moment where Joe Root, where they got rid of the fly slip for Root. They tried to just change up again, going through the plan, cycling through the options they had, where they got rid of fly slip or deep, sort of very fine third man, and Root just looked down there. He just looked over there. And it was pretty clear body language. I'm going to play the reverse ramp. Guys, just so you know, I'm going to play the reverse ramp at some point.
I'm going to hit it that way. I'm going to
there.
turn the bat towards the offside, and I'm going to hold it like a frying pan with a saucepan on it, with a pancake on it. I'm going to flip that pancake into the crowd.
He did everything short of shadow batting with it, right? You know, it was so clear he was going to play the shot. And I think the Australians knew that as well. He nailed a couple of them. One mighty one that nearly went into the sight screen from memory at our end, at the stadium end. And then one that was more angled over the cordon for 4. But again, even that second one, which he didn't make quite as good contact on, immediately Cummins moved a fielder to where he thought the ball had landed. He got that wrong too, by the way. It wasn't where the ball had landed, where he thought the ball might go next time. So what does Root do? Just like it was at Birmingham on that 4th day, put it away. I mean, it's a classic case of an experienced batter batting with a guy who's riding his luck in Crawley, being able to dictate terms, and before you know it, Cummins has sent down his most expensive spell of his career.
And I think there was some of that with Moeen Ali as well. I was critical of that decision to put him at 3. I still think it's a bit of piss-taking, really, to put a player with... I mean, yeah, he batted at 3 a million years ago, but different story now. But maybe in the situation that they were in, where it was all about scoring as quickly as possible. But he didn't. The thing is, he didn't come out and blaze. So there was that rationale that he could come out and be attacking. He makes his 50 off 80 odd deliveries, good clip, but not like he's trying to take on everything and take them down. But what he did was put away the pull shots initially. So he got... It's not like they went full bouncer wars at him when he came out. They bumped him some of the time. They didn't some of the time. Maybe
took him a couple of overs to get there, didn't they?
Yeah, and they could have maybe done it a little bit more on occasion as well. It was sort of sporadically thrown in there. But when it started happening, he got out of the way for the most part. He played the odd ball down from around sort of throat height down into the pitch off his gloves. And there was one over in particular where Cummins bowls 5 bounces at him and he just gets out of the way of all 5 of them. Then there's a no ball from the last ball. Cummins has to re-bowl it, and he plays a pull shot to that one. He was able to resist for that long, but he just pulled it for a single. So he makes his 50. He's there in that 100 partnership. He gets it all going, and then it felt like he ran out of steam a little bit in terms of patience, because he plays a big pull shot to mid wicket, which is dropped by Cummins, sort of lobs off the top edge, and then the next over he plays exactly the same shot off Stark, and Khawaja takes a screamer. So that was where I thought, maybe Moeen's only got so much sort of patience left in him, and after a while he tired out, but through that early part he actually played his role, and he put his pull shots away and made sure he stayed there. Yeah,
I agree. I think the way he ducked was really impressive, watching the ball before getting out of the way and so on. It's not easy to do. I think we sometimes make it sound like ducking out the way of bounces is straightforward, but it's clearly not. Look at how many guys have been hit in the helmet and required concussion tests through the series. So that drop catch cost them 1 run, and all felt okay again. Stark picking up the first 2 wickets. He was in the wars today. Hamstring challenges, knee problem, fell on his shoulder late in the day, which might be something.
I think he's in trouble with that, because he came back on. So he's diving across it mid on and mid off, lands heavily on the left shoulder. It looked like it was the one where it presses back in, sort of, and he got up gingerly and he looked sore, went off, came back on, but then he fielded a ball and he just couldn't throw it. He shaped to throw the ball and was like, I can't do this.
He ran it in, didn't he? He got the ball and ran it in.
He sort of underarmed it back to them and went off immediately again. So I think he's in real strife. And so, I mean, in a lot of ways, Australia might be hoping that the weekend rain is as bad as forecast and they can get away with, I suppose as Simon Burton said, they're down to their last 5 bowlers. Australia.
Yeah, and they didn't use their 5th one particularly well either. Mitchell Marsh didn't bowl until Crawley was on 112.
Yeah.
Nicked him off both times last week. And I know that it's easy in retrospect to quarterback this, and say, well, this should have been...
different conditions, it wasn't really swinging.
Sure, but nevertheless, it did seem like they left that too long, and by that point, keep her up to the stump stuff, isn't it, with Marsh, because there's no meaningful pace. The ball's a bit older. Crawley's set. They're trying to keep him at home and not get out of his crease to him. And all the rest
There's a symbolic difference between Crawley slotting Marsh for 6 over over deep mid-wicket
what a
today
shot that was.
versus edging off in the 30s and 40s both times.
That shot he played off Marsh was, you used the word imperious before, that's precisely what it was, like picking his moment to swing hard and absolutely middling it. He played some stunning shots. I mean, Crawley, 189, the partnership with Root, validating those who backed him in. For him, it's a career-defining moment, his first Ashes century for any player that takes the field in these contests. Getting one against Australia, I mean, as Ben Gardner pointed out on Twitter, he's got one more Ashes 100 in England than Alistair Cook's got, which has always been a frustration for Cook, having never got one in this country against Australia, but still leading run scorer in the series. I know Rob Key was watching closely today.
He almost got that in the space of an innings. I mean, the 300 odd, I think, was where are we? Khawaja would have been on about 340 before, after the first innings in this test.
Yeah, that's right. And just on the numbers and the partnerships, just to come back to that for a moment. Yesterday, Australia had 5 partnerships between 39 and 63. England didn't fall into that trap where they got set and they kept going. So that stand of 121, it kind of felt like it broke the back of the Australian attack a little bit. And then, once Root got out there playing the way he was playing, some of those cut shots from Root behind point were timed so well. One stands out in the memory towards the corporate box, the point. He timed it and placed it in a way, and it's a back cut shot, but it's all about timing. Mitch Marsh had 10 metres to run from backward point, couldn't get there in time. So that was the kind. It took a grubber. It took a grubber from Hazelwood to deny Root another test ton.
Yeah, and that was after Crawley had got out as well. I mean, almost bizarre in retrospect. Green's coming around the wicket at that point, isn't he? Sort of shortish ball, and Crawley pulls it off the gloves down onto the stumps and manages to get himself bowled on 189. And then the one that goes along the carpet that Root gets, where there's very little he can do about that.
Ambrose to Blewett stuff, wasn't
it? Yeah, close. He's had a couple of those over the years too. I remember Hazelwood getting in with one of those. Was it in Adelaide? It clipped the toe of the bat and was caught behind something. That might have been the Chris Wokes one. I might be mixing them up, but he's had his share of moments when he might feel a little hard done by it, but he played beautifully, and whether or not he got 100, I don't think he's too bothered at this point.
No, even the way he was playing in the 20s. Like, remember that Root gets out to the hook shot twice in about 5 minutes at Lords. One was a front foot no ball from Cameron Green. And there was a lot of criticism and scrutiny, including from us, about how he could have fallen into that trap. Well, the trap was set today, but he's clearly changed his technique. Sky had a graphic where they compared his stance. He's opened up more, and he's got the bat a lot higher, like a baseballer, because he knows it's coming.
Stance today.
He knows it's coming, and he's already kind of inside the line to pull down hard on the ball. He's letting balls go to the too high, and if it's helmet or above, he's controlling it down into the turf. And the ones that he found the gap. There was one stage where Smith came up from deep backward square, so not on the one, but maybe 30 metres inside the rope. So he just smacked it past him. He picked his moments to be super aggressive, and the cut shots we already mentioned. It's great to see Root in full flight. He's, if not the most attractive player in the world, close to it.
And the sense I was getting from people watching at home in Australia was, what the hell is going on? Like, what has happened to this team in the space of 30 overs? They've kind of gone to bits. And it wasn't like there was a raft of drop catches, and there was the one, but then they make up that catch a couple of balls later, and there was the one at mid-on where Cummins couldn't pick up the ball in the crowd when it was lobbed down there by Moeen off Travis Head. And so it might have been able to catch it if he'd picked it up earlier, but it wasn't like everything was sort of going to slop like you see sometimes with teams on the field, but it was like they just didn't know what to do. And then every time they tried something, it just didn't work. Like, everything failed today. Every field placing failed. Every time they made a gap, that's where the ball went next.
Yeah, it belied the rhythm of the series, right? Every time we've had one side get on top and feel like they're about to power home and press home their advantage, the other side's dragged their way back into it, either via unforced errors or by good cricket. This was the opposite of that. The deeper England got into this sustained attack, the less likely it looked like they were going to be dismissed. So it meant, it's the first proper day in the dirt I reckon that either side's truly had. Even Edgbaston on day one for Australia, they come out of that thinking we did not a bad job of containing boundaries and of managing the circumstances as best we could on a real flat one.
They worked through the lineup. They picked up enough wickets along the way. So if Australia, if today had panned out as it was and Australia had them 8 or 9 down, they'd be thinking, well, okay, we'll take that maybe.
And the options that Ben Stokes has now, the fact that he's 24 from 37, he's there with Harry Brook, who played the innings of a lifetime last week in great touch on 14. They've put on 33.
And it was just sensible today. They just came out and batted sensibly for that last hour. That was almost almost the weirdest bit that Stokes and Brook went, okay, well, we've got 50 minutes or so to the close. Let's just, put it away, really.
I theorise they might declare, and this is way earlier in the day, they might try and speed the game up yet further by bowling tonight. And if there were to be, if the rain plays out the way we're told it's going to play out on Saturday and Sunday, at least they're giving themselves the chance to have maybe 13 of the 20 they need by stumps tonight in a really good, positive scenario for England. But now with the pitch playing a few tricks, a few balls keeping low, and knowing that, the benefit of overnight is that the forecast might change.
Right.
So it might be they wake up tomorrow and they're like, well, actually, day 4's not quite so bad and day 5's a little bit better. They might end up being in a position where they can bat normally, normally for them still 4.5, 5 and over, and bat all the way through and only bat once. And what a situation they'd be in then to just turn the screws on Australia, who in that situation would need to bat out a long time for a draw to win the series. Even that would be, I know it wouldn't be anywhere near as close a result as we had at Birmingham, Lords and Leeds, but that would also be fascinating, watching Australia try to hold on against England if they are on the rampage.
Or if the forecast is bad, then they could bat through at a pretty quick rate until lunch, say, bat through that first session. You declare around lunchtime or just before.
60 overs to bowl them out.
Yeah, you still give yourself the long second session and maybe you get a session in somewhere on the weekend amongst the showers if you're lucky, if you need to mop up a few wickets at the end.
They are the options that England now enjoy. Let's turn to the final word, Hall of Fame. The final word Hall of Fame is brought to you by Westfield London and Westfield Stratford City.
It is.
More extra, less ordinary.
That is what we say about them. That is what we famously, historically have said. When the record of this series is written and people say, what did the final word say about Westfield? That's what we will have said.
Sun's out, fun's out. Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City this summer. It was out most of the day, but you said you were cold.
It's freezing right now. It's legitimately, the wind is freezing. There was sun.
We saw all the Aussies wearing their bobble hats, their beanies yesterday, which felt a bit of overkill. It's worthwhile today. Who's to know? Get down to Westfield London during the week for the amazing Sunset social promotion, which includes exclusive cocktails and summer menus, live music, and offers on places to eat and drink, including Sticks and Sushi, a See It to Believe It Danish-Japanese fusion restaurant, together at last.
Danish-Japanese?
Where you can enjoy their lobster croquettes and a glass of rosé for 15 quid. I would do that. I would happily do that. Sticks and Sushi, Danish and Japanese. I went to a restaurant the other night, Jeff, called Karachi Wok with Coney, Norcross and Kimber. It was a Chinese-Indian fusion. I'm not sure where Karachi Wok and Woks were involved in all that.
Wok. Okay, so it must have been right. This is something that happens a lot in India. Bharat Sundaresan that tells us about these fusion sort of Chinese-Indian fusion cuisines all around the place.
Bharat was at that dinner and he had the Chinese, not the Indian.
Oh. Yes. Yep. Well, Danish-Japanese is new one to me, but we'll check it out. Imagine if they had a Danish in the Danish restaurant that was Japanese themed.
Google them. Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City. What great supporters they are of the final word. What are your nominations? Any off the top? I've got a lot.
Okay. I've got one I might come back to.
Okay.
Why don't you start with one?
I'll rattle through a few. First of all, Daniel Norcross pouring water all over the commentary desk today, and I had to clean it up with a pair of Lancashire playing trousers. Now, Jeff, you know I've got form when it comes to playing trousers. Trying to win Mark Wars on eBay late one night in the 2015 Ashes. Those trousers are now mine. Bright red. I've mopped up Daniel's mess with them. They are going to be in my kit bag tonight.
Wow.
There was an Alex Hartley light tower, another co-host of the final word, both Daniel and Alex. Alex did the job during the Women's Ashes recently. They've named a pylon after her. I gathered through pressure that she and Kate Cross, who rang the bell today, have applied through the No Balls podcast. So well done,
and
Alex.
on TMS yesterday as well. So
that's the context of the pylon.
Yes, we're saying that it'd be nice to have something named after me. Maybe just a light tower.
And what light towers they are? I'm looking at one of them now. That must be sort of 60 metres in the sky.
Well, there's only 4 of them. So I mean, if they get shared around, does who else is going to get one? Does Fred Truman get a light tower?
I've got some Samson stuff for you. Well, first of all, that wicket today that Anderson took, first ball of the day, that was at 10:59, and you very rarely see that in modern Test cricket. The umpires are quite fussy about waiting until they're watched, which I assume is all lined up with all the devices we have these days from the one conglomerate that owns all the bloody devices we own.
The one conglomerate that owns the time.
Yes, it does feel that way, doesn't it? But no, they went at 11:59 or 10:59 rather, and that's when Anderson got the wicket. The Wokes no ball, that wasn't a no ball. I mean, his bloody boot was, when he makes contact, the buffer of his boot, because we know that from Cummins at Brisbane a few years ago. If the buffer of your shoe, You know, if the
It doesn't have to be the bit that's touching the ground.
no,
that's behind
it's just
the line.
any of the shoe
Any
needs
bit.
to be the plain.
Yeah.
I thought that was clear cut to me. That wasn't a no. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It didn't affect
Which
the game
is
too
why
much.
I've had this theory for years that they should design a bowling shoe with like a little flag on the back.
Couldn't
that
agree
stretches
more.
back a few inches.
I think we did this
And
at the
then-
time on the final word daily.
Yeah.
We said we want to get boots with a big fat bum on the back of it.
Yeah, like a sort of like something that curves up so it won't touch the ground, but like a tail so that you're always back over the line. Can I throw in one, which
Yep.
is when Anderson took that wicket, and I mean, you know, I felt a little bit grateful. It's like, well, thank God, at least he picked up a wicket.
Me
You know,
too.
There was
yeah.
a moment of
So
that.
does Stokes.
Ali Martin of The Guardian turns to me and says, James Anderson has just broken the record for the most wickets by an English bowler that was previously held by James Anderson. It's true. It's a new record. 689 is now the record. It was 688.
There was a boundary in the first ball of, I don't remember when. Was it the first something?
There was a wicket first ball of the day.
There's something here. I've got 4 times 4 first ball. There must have been a boundary in the first ball of England's innings. Does that
There
sound
was
that line up with you?
Crawley off the gloves past Carey down the leg side for the start.
That's the most 4 times in the series. That's the equal most in a series where there's been a boundary from the first ball of it.
The
other
two
series,
Crawleys. There was Warner in the first innings here.
You got it.
I don't know who the other one was.
I don't know either, but I know that the other time it happened was in 1972 when England played Australia. 3 of them were Keith Stackpole. That's a Samo as well, and I've already done the one about 200 partnerships.
Okay. Well, what I liked was that when Zak Crawley was getting close to his 100, and the England staff was sitting out on the balcony, and Brendan McCullum was out there in his big padded coat. They've all got those uniform things with the towel across his legs. And I was able to look over the balcony and have a squiz. He was watching golf on his iPad.
Of course he was.
Yep. They had the cricket on the laptop and the golf on the iPad.
Never changed. Of course, the Open Championship this week, and it being a Thursday. I get it. That's it from us. Final word daily is brought to you by Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City. I've got places to be. You do as well. We've loved today, though. What a day, cricket. 402 runs. England in a great position tomorrow to do something fun.
See you on day 3.
Night.